Hey people, do you probably know what the whole situation was with Danny and why he left YouTube and all that? But if you don't, I'll wrap it up real quick for you. Basically, this guy made really cool games and everyone really enjoyed them, and he was working on this really big project called KARLSON. It was like a FPS milk shooter thing. I really enjoyed watching the devlogs and I think the game looked really cool, but he sadly disappeared 2 years ago to never be seen again. Anyway, now that you're all up to speed, I won't bore you anymore and we can get to the fun part. So many of you won't actually know this, but I did try this before and the game ended up really bad. It's better than Bean Shooter. Do not play that, it's so bad. But still, the game, it was a game, but it didn't really feel good. Plus, it was unfinished, which is why in this video we're going to be finishing it and refurbishing it and make it look really nice and all that. So I started off by making a new game in Unity and then making the scene and adding some post-processing to make it look really cool. Now if we want to get some good gameplay in there, we're going to have to add the player, otherwise you'd just be staring at a blank screen. So the main thing with the movement in KARLSON is it's all smooth and parkour based, so I tried to recreate that. So I added in this player and he feels really smooth to walk around with because he's got wall running, jumping, crouching, sliding, whole 9 yards. Now in KARLSON you've got this little companion named Billy, so I decided to recreate that and named him Cubo. I don't know. Really goofy and stuff. You can throw him and throw blocks into him and shoot him and all that, and it's pretty cool because you can bully him like in KARLSON. Next thing we need to add into the game is enemies. Now KARLSON has these sort of robot guys, but I don't want to completely rip off the game and steal a model from Sketchfab, so I instead decided to model my own out in Blender and add it to the game. Here he is in the game. He looks a little drunk right now, but I don't think I'm going to fix that. He looks kind of goofy. I decided to add some jiggle physics to him, so when he falls off a wall he'll bounce up and fall over and all that. He also has a ragdoll when he dies if you shoot him enough times, but we need to add weapons later. So right now he doesn't actually do anything and hit the player or shoot him, so I decided to make another guy which does shoot the player. However, the player doesn't now have any health, so I added a health system and made it so that some cool text appears when you take damage, so you're like a real robot, and you're getting error messages, which is pretty cool. So now we need to add some weapons to the game so you can actually beat up the enemies. So I started off by adding a sword and adding a collider so it can interact with the rigid bodies and make the guy ragdoll and stuff. Then I also added a script to it, which allows it to deal damage to the enemy health script, and now they ragdoll after death. Only having one weapon though is pretty bad, so I decided to make an inventory system, which allows the player to scroll through and hit the numbers to change between weapons. So I also added a gun, which allows the player to shoot enemies, and it does less damage than the sword, but it's a ranged weapon, so it's equally better. Now in KARLSON, Danny added a special feature to the sword where you can use the other end to grapple to points. Now I thought that was a really good feature, so yoink. And there you go, now you can use the other end of the sword to grapple in-game. Now there's two types of points you can grapple to. The blue points, which bounce you off of them, and the green points, which basically are like a slingshot, which I definitely did not steal from Ultra Kill whatsoever. Next up, I wanted to add some stuff that will combo with the player movement in-game. So I added these gravity zones. Now there's two types of zones. The blue ones that don't have any gravity, so you'll just be flying around, and the yellow ones, which have lots of gravity, so you'll be having a hard time moving around in them. Then I also added this bounce pad, which works with all rigid body objects, including stuff like Cubo and the enemies. The gravity zones also work with both of them, and it's pretty goofy, so look at this.
Wait.
You know what's better than a primary system? A secondary system. So I added it into the game, and now you can push shift and then the number keys to activate different abilities. So far, I've got an impulse grenade which blows everything away, and an inverse impulse grenade, I don't know, but it pulls everything in, including dead bodies, which is quite funny. So the last thing I'm going to add for this episode is sound effects for all the weapons I've added. So I added some sword sound effects, some gun sound effects, and just some general other stuff, like the grappling on the sword. Most of the sound effects kinda sound bad, but I'm sure I'll end up changing them later, so that's all I've got for now. And that's where I'm gonna leave it for this episode, because I haven't uploaded in a while, and YouTube's probably wondering where I am. If you've got any suggestions for the game, put it down in the comments, but next episode I'm gonna look at making maps and adding more features, so it actually feels more like KARLSON than just some random robot shooter.